my passion about HR and why I think it's such a great occupation is you can figure out how to best leverage your human resources, the people, right, to really drive business results. I don't have the luxury of having a large learning and development team I have in the past, right, where I've got a core team of trainers and we've got content developers. So we were actually looking for a partner. So I don't think you probably realized that at the time. I got the email and it was like, okay, let's throw big learning into the mix. Recognizing, again, that need from the time when you think about the employee life cycle, the need to really onboard more efficiently, ramp up time to full productivity, tie back performance management, session planning, all of those components, tie that into learning and developing our people. It's not as easy as to look at like sales, right? Sales are very driven. They go up and down and I can measure them every day. I can look at our financial, impact and what that looks like. So I think that's the fundamental struggle for some HR leaders.
Today, this is a very exciting opportunity because this is the first time that we get to interview one of our customers. And this has been a journey getting here, actually. So about 4 years ago, I started Fig Learning with the intention of supporting small and medium businesses to really invest into their employees, into talent development, when they don't themselves have learning and development people within the organization. So fast forward 4 years, we now arrive at this point where I'm bringing together two great people onto this call. I have my partner in crime, Matthew Wilkinson, and Matthew, funnily enough, was one of my customers previously, and now he's come and joined Fig Learning's merry bandwagon. But Matthew, very quickly, would you like to just do a very quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I ended up working with one of the great companies that I worked with over the years. I'm based in the UK, and I have been working in learning and development now for probably 20 odd years. I've worked with tech companies within those 10 years, from Time Warner, Gartner, Unity, most recently an AI company, Symphony AI, and about 5 months ago, I was having a conversation with my great friend now, Jonathan, and our worlds kind of came together, worlds collided, as they were, and we saw some real value in bringing both of our worlds together.
So just before we introduce Anne, when we say bringing our worlds together, so Fig Learning is actually more on the learning technology side, so learning management systems, content libraries, and as Anne will talk about shortly, is we bring that into the context of an organization. And what Matthew really had a passion for is facilitated training, more focusing on leadership development or communication skills, or helping organizations be more productive, but more in person, both virtually and actually live within somebody's organization, somebody's office space. So without further ado, we'd like to bring in our special guest today. And Anne Mitchell is the Chief HR Officer for Montway. They are a 400-person organization, both with locations in the US and within Eastern Europe, which we'll dive into. But Anne, welcome to today's show.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Fantastic. So Anne, let's start off. Where I wanted to begin is not actually with our relationship, but it's actually where you started off with your career. Because looking at your profile and doing my research, you've actually been in HR now for almost 25
Don't
years.
say it.
I was thinking about whether I should or not. No, but it's wonderful. And that journey is where I want to start. But can you just explain to us all why HR? What took you down that path 25 years ago?
My background is a little crazy. So like many people, I went to school for something different. I actually got a degree in biology and chemistry, right? I don't use it today. I started my career, I was good with numbers. I started out in finance and found myself just continually thinking about like the employee experience and engagement. And I would go to the head of HR at the time and just say, hey, have you thought about this? This might be a good idea. Or I heard someone say this. Are you thinking about implementing this as an employee engagement tool? And so finally there was an opening for reporting and doing turnover reports. So way back when, And that's why I got into HR. And it is just, I found that that's my fit. It's my passion. I can still do analytics, right? Use the math background, but then really my passion about HR and why I think it's such a great occupation is you can figure out how to best leverage your human resources, the people, right, to really drive business results. And it's a perfect fit because I get to know the people, but I also have to understand the business to know what my priorities, are going to be each year.
So I had no idea you did chemistry for your degree. So did I. There we go. Hey, and I think it is that analytical mindset that can drive you towards thinking about people in a different way. And that actually transitions perfectly into what I love about your career. So when you went into HR, you started off on the operational side, and you can see that you quickly transitioned to more of a strategic position, and really thinking about how you can support the executive to drive their strategic initiatives. Just talk to us about that transition that you went on from operational HR into more a strategic approach.
Yeah. So like anyone else, again, when you move over, it was understanding the nuts and bolts of HR, right? So I went through, every position or subject or the functional area, right? So I started with more basic, just, let's get the handbook updated. Let's do some reporting metrics, and then went through, the recruiting team and talent acquisition. And I think one of the key things for me in my career is I remember I was, I think a director level at the time. And I had a really good mentor as head of HR when I was back with Boston Market. And one of the things that he had asked me to do is say, hey, we have an opening, our payroll and HRIS director is leaving. I'd like you to run the team. And I was like, I know nothing about this. Like, why are you asking me? And his answer was, it's not about not about knowing all the details. He's like, you need to be able to lead the team, right? You have the experts on the team, and I believe in your leadership capabilities and how you see the big picture. And so that was a pivotal conversation. And that was probably, 23 years ago today that I still remember so clearly, that it's about leadership and how you see the big picture, and you just rely on your teams. And then from there, then more of those partnerships started to form at the senior level, and really getting other leaders to understand that HR isn't just the personnel office, right? Here's the value that we can bring to the organization, and here's how we can support the business and what we're trying to accomplish.
No, I just want to say that really resonates with my background as well. This thing about not needing to know all of the details all of the time, particularly when you transition. Again, working in the tech sector for so many years now, I've seen a lot of software engineers, developers who reach a certain point and then are promoted into a line manager role, into a leadership role, and then find it really tough because they feel as though they still need to know everything. Maybe again, it's because of their backgrounds with maths and sciences and that kind of thing, needing to know the details and not necessarily letting go of what got them to where they were and why they were so successful in the first place. So a lot of what you mentioned there, Anne, resonates for me and my experience.
And do you think that a lot of HR people find that transition to either not a leadership role or a more strategic role in supporting the business, is that challenging for HR people? And if so, why?
I think it can be challenging for HR people. And I think, again, it's all in how you approach, right? Again, if people are thinking about, HR is like the fun team, right? Or that's who I go to when I want to fire somebody, right? You have to be able to have a very data-driven and fact-based approach to really push and help the rest of the team understand the value that HR can bring. Oftentimes, the human resource side, outside of quantifying, what the engagement scores are or what is our attrition rate. It's not as easy as to look at like sales, right? Sales are very driven. They go up and down, and I can measure them every day. I can look at our financial, impact and what that looks like. So I think that's the fundamental struggle for some HR leaders is understanding, what do I need to do, as a team that ties to what the business is doing, and help those other leaders understand that if this is our strategic, initiatives for the next, let's say 1 to 2 years, what does the human capital, side look like, and how can we bring to the table, right? So is it training and development, right? What is it that we can add value to get the business to accomplish what it needs to accomplish? It's tying those two together, and you've got to have factual data that you can pose to really prove your point.
And that's not easy.
I think so. No.
Why? It's not easy at all.
Because it's about humans at the end of the day, right? It's about hard stuff. Sales people think they have it hard. But when it gets down to the human condition, the human mind, the differences in individuals, the way we show up to work, our aspirations, sometimes those are just hard. Those are hard things to measure, to put a number around, to move in the right direction. So HR is a tough place.
And I think the key thing here is because obviously like articulating something tangible to the executive team to say, look, this is where we started and this is what we've gone to, and that's the value towards the company. With sales, you invest into the sales team, you hopefully see revenue increase. You invest into the customer service team, you hopefully see high customer satisfaction scores. But when you invest into the people, there's sometimes it's very hard to see a tangible result, which obviously we'll go into more detail now as we break that down. So, just in some of the ways that you potentially do that, I'm just intrigued by this. It's one of the things that we've spoken about before, and it's kind of like breaking it down to think about it in terms of the employee experience. So if we say there are a number of different steps in that employee experience, whether it's attracting top talent, onboarding them effectively, developing them at times, or performance reviews, you obviously speak passionately about trying to invest into the employee experience. Just give us your thoughts on that. Is that a good entry point to try and make it a little bit simpler for people that don't take that strategic approach just yet?
The whole employee experience wheel, again, from inception, like that very first time you reach out to a prospective employee, right? You're setting the stage for that employee experience within your organization. And then, all the way till you part ways, regardless of the reason, right? Those are all pieces that are going to impact how people view your organization, both internally and externally when people leave. So that wheel helps to really break down and understand into segments and also functional areas of how you can tie, okay, as a strategy, we have to upgrade our talent. We really, are going to be trying to build our sales, right? So let's say our sales goal is to increase sales, by 20% over the next year. Do we have the right people in place currently, right? So you look at succession planning and seeing where people are, and then you go back to that first, talent acquisition and onboarding. Like, do we need to go and get new people of a different caliber? And then what does that look like? So each of those wheels, depending on, again, what that initiative is, you can tie back to that wheel, even if you don't necessarily understand the strategy standpoint. I think it's a really easy way to break down and listen to the business and where they're trying to go. And then think about, okay, in this employee life cycle, what pieces can I leverage to help the business accomplish their objectives?
And I think it's often that people will go first and foremost to recruitment, but recruitment can be very expensive. And that's obviously now why we're trying to help people, obviously not necessarily having L&D people, to invest into talent development, which obviously we'll discuss as we go down this path together. So, and let's come up to Montway then. So we now understand obviously why you went into HR, but it now brings you up to Montway. So why don't you tell us about what attracted you to Montway, and then what is your current role within Montway, your priorities?
Yeah, so I joined Montway 2 years ago. Actually, tomorrow is my 2-year anniversary. So what attracted me, I am sort of in, what I would consider the twilight of my career, right? So I'm really thinking about what's important to me as I move towards retirement. And I was really looking for an organization where I could come in and make an impact. And 2 years ago, when the opening occurred at Montway, the organization was really looking again from a strategic standpoint, how do we continue to position the organization for growth? And most people know it's hard to sustain growth, right? So Montway, small startup company over 10 years ago, right, by an individual, person literally, out of his garage or a small space, right, to this very large, profitable and successful industry leading organization. And so going back again to 2 years, the leadership at the time realized, hey, you know what, we've got to figure out how do we position holistically this organization to move quickly, and thankfully recognize that a lot of that has to do with the people, right? So analyzing all the aspects of like, how do we become a competitive employer? Are our benefits competitive? Do we have systems in place so that we can accurately pull data and understand where our metrics are? So there was a myriad of things that I was able to think through, knowing where Montway was. And that was what was so exciting to me. It's like, I know I can come in and again, make that difference from the human capital side to really help drive the business to where they need to go, in the next 3 to 5 years, let's say.
And then coming up to now in the place that you're at, what do you see as your main priorities in the position that you're currently in?
It's evolved. So when I joined, it was more blocking and tackling, right? There was just like basic stuff that, again, as the organization was growing so quickly, there wasn't a focus, right? Because you're trying to keep up, sales are coming in. And so, there wasn't that opportunity to take a step back and kind of breathe and observe. So again, initially was blocking and tackling. What basic things do we need to have in place to function as an organization? And then fast forward, really probably over the past year is where our conversation started to evolve, is looking at, okay, I've got the foundations in place, but now let's really talk about our people, right? Not that we weren't talking about people, but talk about our people from a development standpoint. And how do we equip everyone within the organization with the tools to help them, grow personally and professionally?
Fantastic. And that's so our conversation started back in April 2023. And at that point, just highlights kind of like what were your priorities. So when I reached out to you with the option of a learning management system and a content library, obviously we're going to try and put into the context of your world, what did you feel like at that point were your core priorities?
Looking for a partner. So again, we're a lean, small organization. And I think it was you, Jonathan, that mentioned when we started, I don't have the luxury of having a large learning and development team I have in the past, right? Where I've got a core team of trainers and we've got content developers. We're a very small HR team. So we were actually looking for a partner. So I don't think you probably realized that at the time. I got the email and it was like, okay, let's throw Big Learning into the mix. Recognizing again that need from the time when you think about the employee life cycle, the need to really onboard more efficiently, ramp up time to full productivity, tie back performance management, so succession planning, all of those components, tie that into learning and developing our people. And we really got there from conducting engagement surveys, right? And one of the top things that popped up 2 years in a row as we went through the Great Place to Work certification in the US was training and development, right? I want to be a better leader or I want to grow in my career. So as, again, looking through those priorities, it was a win-win because employees were saying loud and clear they want development, but then ultimately knowing that to continue to drive growth within the organization, we have to develop internally and create promotional opportunities for people and then give them the tools for success. So we're not just saying, hey, manager, yay, you're promoted and good luck with that. That's a terrible experience, right? We probably have all gone through that and it's the worst. It's the worst.
I mean, we all laugh there when you said that, but that's the majority of organizations, right? They get promoted on a Friday, a manager gets promoted on a Friday, and a Monday, they get given this team, and then what? I mean, Matthew, you and I speak about this all the time. That's actually your knowledge, right? But what's your experience on that part?
It's a very, very common thing. And I kind of felt a bit guilty for laughing there, but because it's such a common thing among small and very large organizations that quite honestly should know better with this type of thing as well. And just going back to what I was saying a little bit earlier about the job of work that HR has, when you think about the cost on a balance sheet or profit and loss about the people, salaries, everything, benefits. Why is it that organizations invest so little money, if any, in the biggest cost to an organization? Organizations have products, they have machinery, they have offices, they have product and all that type of thing. maybe it goes back to the fact that HR and people, it's just hard, because it always fundamentally worries me how someone's promoted on a Friday, someone says good luck to them on the Monday, and then they wonder why these people are coming back saying, help, or I don't want to do this anymore, to be quite honest, because this is a darn hard thing to be doing, is dealing with people. And so it really is a very interesting question for me about the size of the cost and the size of the investment in that cost being so small. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's hard.
But I think also, like, touching on the manager piece, if you're going to invest into anybody, invest in those managers to be able to have better conversations, be better prepared themselves, and better conversations, development conversations with their team. And that was top priority for you, right? You obviously, when you came to us, you wanted to make sure that your management team had the foundational skills to be operational at all levels of management. But tell us a little more about what your thought process was there into developing your managers.
Focusing again on providing those tools. And we've been guilty, just like Matthew, you were talking about, of having great intentions, right? Of looking in and seeing who is the best of the best, or who's exhibiting potential to be a manager, but then promoting and then kind of walking away, not intentionally, but we just didn't have the tools and resources in place. Even though there might be a check-in or a mentor coming in, there wasn't the structure there. And I'm a firm believer, and you'll hear and see studies that say, everyone says people leave for pay. That's always a component, but so much of it is about the culture of the company and your manager. So if we can increase the skill set and the competencies of our managers, not only do we create better managers, right? Hopefully they come to work every day feeling engaged because they have the confidence to do their job, to have appropriate conversations, right? They know how to interview, for high caliber candidates, right? But then that also then trickles down to their team, because now their team sees a manager that's having better conversations, understands the importance of one-on-ones, touch spaces, performance conversations, difficult conversations. All of those things tie together for that overall employee experience and building the culture that we want at Montway, again, for that driving the long-term growth of the company. But it ties back to, our mission is to deliver 5-star service to our customers and employees. When I joined the organization, employees were not mentioned, right? And so that's, again, just such a core thing of, we can deliver 5-star in service to our external customers and then our internal customers who are our employees. And so how do we do that? It goes back to the training and development piece. It's a component of it.
I think one of the things you just said just then, I think is just so important. If you've got managers who have the confidence in their own ability, they stop thinking about self and they start thinking about those around them, right? So if we can enable our managers to have the skill set and the confidence to believe that they are good at what they do, then their attention, their time goes into enabling the people around them, as opposed to trying to scramble to develop themselves. Right? And I think that is such a wonderful point that we can do such a much better job on, and then in turn have those development conversations with their team to help them to reach their potential, which comes full cycle. And what you just said, grows the organization, helps the company to achieve its targets, its goals. So I thought that was wonderful. Matthew, what else do you think that we should be thinking about there from a management development perspective?
Anne mentioned it actually about succession planning and about how you go about identifying the next kind of a tranche of people coming through. Again, I think we always expect and assume, maybe it's the right word, assume that people want to progress and therefore become a people manager. That's the traditional thing, isn't it? You do well in your job and well done. You're given a badge and you're now a manager. But I wonder how many organizations, and I think Montway is one of those, it really engages in succession planning properly, really being very clear on what kind of traits they're looking for, they're trying to identify, and actually to help kind of nurture people even before there's like the opportunities or the promotion rounds arise, even to the point of sharing expectation of what it is to be a manager at Montway. These are the things that you need to be doing. These are the expectations. And going back to what I said earlier, leaving that stuff behind and becoming a people manager. So there are these ways, I think, and I'd love to think that everybody is going through a rigorous succession planning process. Many that I've worked in haven't. It's been a little bit of unconscious bias kind of creeping in there, or worst, who's been here the longest. If you've been here the longest, it's your turn. No, it isn't. No, it isn't your turn if you're not the right person for the role, if you're not exhibiting the right behaviors. So I think that kind of whether we kind of aspiring manager, that kind of time before people make the move or even want to make the move, I think is also critical for people as well and companies.
So what happened here, and this is what we really want to sort of dive into now with you specifically, Anne, is you built a really nice foundation that allowed people to get the management training, allowed them to go and build skills and go and self-discover. We kind of like ticked off that online learning element of it, where we can obviously enable managers to have better conversations, etc. But the one thing that I thought was great, given obviously your experience, you can now see why you got to this stage, is where you identified a real opportunity to connect learning to the business. And so about let's say 3 or 4 months ago, but I think back in July, we came to you and we said, we've created a leadership development program. And we have 4 stages of leadership, and we'd like to talk to you about obviously what we're doing. And then you said to us, guys, hold on one second. I'd like to just obviously present to you a different perspective, because this is what our real need is in the business. So, Anne, just take us through that story of where we presented to you a leadership development program, and then what were your thoughts from there?
So it was exciting to see, right? Because as you mentioned, Jonathan, we had implemented Fig Learning, right, as our LMS. And so with some of the blocking and tackling I was talking about and bringing Montway to what I call a grown-up organization, right? We implemented performance management. We've implemented succession planning, and that's how we leverage the LMS is, again, Jonathan knows, like, let's train these people, our managers, to have really good conversations. And also, by the way, let's have our employees go through different courses within the LMS to understand the experience so they're prepared as well. Like, how do I write my own self-evaluation? So we were doing a really good job, I think, of leveraging the LMS itself. And the next stage of that was then, okay, we've got these pieces in a pretty good spot. The next step is leadership development. So I was excited to see the platform, but then fast forwarding and thinking about, okay, knowing that purse strings are tight and oftentimes HR is seen as a cost center, right? Like, I've just got all this headcount, they're costing me money, right? They're not adding to our revenue in a very easy to identify way, right? It's a lot of theoretical sometimes, and people say it's squishy, right? We had just come up like 2 or 3 weeks before having our conversation about this leadership development program. Conversation started in the business about that 5-star customer service, right? Delivering 5-star customer service to our external customers each and every day, right? And we were noticing some common themes in the customer comments that were coming in. And, the 5-star rating starting to just slip ever so slightly. So that led me to think, okay, if we do this right, and if you guys are willing to pivot with me, the common threads that were coming out, because our agents are overseas for the most part that are dealing with our customers, and with the cultural differences between our employees in Bulgaria and our customers here in the U.S., there's nuances, right? And what a U.S. customer expects from a conversation, and then what someone that's over in Bulgaria thinks, how that conversation goes, there's just cultural nuances. And one of the things that was popping up was empathy. The customer's not feeling heard or feeling like the person on the other end of the phone really understands how they're feeling and what the issue is. So that led me to come back and say, hey, if we can do the training, to me, this is not easy, but a way that I can go back again to the leadership team and ask for money for this program and say, I believe that if we train our direct managers on these cultural differences and customer relationships, and in turn then train the agents, right? So training the leaders first so that they can reinforce, they can understand the concept, putting the agents through. So now again, I've got those conversations when someone maybe is not having the best call to again drive the outcome, which is getting higher customer ratings, right? That's ultimately where we want to be. So then I know we can come back, we can look at the call logs, look at the keywords that are coming out of there and see that we've made an impact, and that in turn that customer rating score is increasing. And there's my ROI, right? If we can get return customers coming back that say, hey, Montway, I want you to move my car because I had this wonderful experience in the past, that's increasing revenue, and the cost of this training is a drop in the bucket, right? So that's how it evolved is, if this works, then you know what, I'm going back and I'm saying, hey, now I need more money for specific leadership development training, which is what our conversation was originally in July when you guys pitched the new program.
And that's the brilliant part there, is actually seeing what the executive or the business strategy is, what they care about, and then connecting it to that. So Matthew, when we heard this, we were a bit like, hold on a second, we've got a great program.
Yeah, it was a bit of a left field. A bit of a left field kind of, okay, I'm sure we will make this work. And certainly for me, you know, with all these many years of working in learning and development, this type of project is a massive opportunity, huge opportunity to have an impact and an opportunity to see ROI. There was a very clear linkage between some of the things that Anne was mentioning there and that slight drop in the score. And it was one of those golden moments for someone in L&D to really work on something that will have a direct impact on the business, the revenue of the business, and help Montway kind of navigate what's, you know, becoming quite a crowded kind of market for the types of services that they offer. So, you know, I worked very, very closely with marketing people and the customer service people as well at Montway to dive into the numbers, as well as to dive into the process and how the process affects the numbers. And so what was born was two workshops that we delivered. I delivered for the team leads in Sofia in Bulgaria. And as Anne was mentioning there, some very clear content pieces there around cultural difference. There is, believe it or not, a massive cultural difference between the Bulgarian part of Europe and the US. That comes as probably no surprise. But sometimes you just have to sit back and look and reflect and pull on some external resources. And I pulled on a wonderful external resource, Erin Mayer's Culture Map, where that actually allows you to map the two different cultures against different dimensions, communication, feedback, decision-making, and allows you to visually see the difference and some of the massive gaps. So the workshop was, after spending some time with Montway folks, was very much around giving a bit of information, a bit of content, a bit of education, you could call it, around cultural differences, and then how cultural differences impact empathy. Anne was talking about that. Really understand how you could put yourself in someone else's shoes, even on the end of a call. But it wasn't just what was empathy as opposed to sympathy and theoretical stuff. It was very much, what did empathy actually sound like in a customer service call? And so as part of the session, we pulled, again with the help of the Montway folks, we pulled some good examples and some not so good examples of these customer service calls. And we didn't tell the group which they were, and we let them apply the empathy work, the cultural differences work to the example calls that we had with them, and they were able to work out which was a good and which was a not so good call. And I think this is a really important part of any live training, and this is why I'm really proud to be working with Fig now. We've got the great online resources, but also the in-person delivery where you're helping people take some content and apply it in the real world. And that's exactly what we did. And I think, Anne, you were there for the second of the two sessions. What did you think about the structure and the way we kind of pulled it together?
I think that was, one of the coolest things about how the training flowed. We weren't talking about some theoretical company or, just talking about here's what empathy is and it's going to, increase your bottom line. We were able to use our own data, right? So we started the training looking at the metrics, where our customer service numbers are, what our net promoter score is, right? So kind of helping set the stage of like, this is the why. This is why this is important to the business. And then here's the issue that we have. And so I think that was what made it so much more connected. And the team leads were really able to understand, I get it, right? Because we've talked about empathy. It's not the first time it's been brought up, but to understand why is this important? So setting the stage first off with that, and then being able to use our own calls. I mean, I think that was brilliant, obviously, because, people did the breakouts and they came back, they were laughing, they're like, that was a little rough. So, but
there were some rough ones. I have to say there were some rough ones. There were some brilliant ones. There were some 5-star ones.
Yeah. So that was the best part about it, was to be able to say, have them listen, and it's clear as day, right? And so the team leads, it makes them think, okay, when I'm doing QA, I hear this, but am I really paying attention to it? And so when you point it out in that way and set the stage of what a call where someone is using empathy, what that looks like versus not, I mean, that was just like, bam, right in the face. You couldn't ignore it. And then there was just, the breakout groups, the great discussion. It was informal. There were so many things that led to, a very engaging training session versus, I've been to trainings in the past. And again, I think everybody can identify that, where you're just sitting there and someone is talking at you the entire time. And maybe you've got, a sheet you're following around along, but you lose focus at some point because there's no conversation. There's no sharing of experiences. We got the team leads talked about, what about this and that? So in my mind, these sessions were the best of everything that, in-person training, learning and development can be, for sure.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Anna. And I know we've had some great, the feedback has been great from the groups. Some really, I think people who probably knew some of the stuff, but actually applying that stuff like empathy, what is it, to their real life situations, it kind of, people were saying and, directly quoting, kind of opened my eyes to some of this stuff as well. So what's next, Anne, with this particular project?
Yeah. So next, again, from my perspective, the cool thing about this bridge between the learning management system that is Fig Learning and then the in-person leadership development training is our next step is we're not bringing Matthew back right away to talk to the team leads. We're going to be doing virtual reinforcement and follow-up sessions. So that will be happening to keep it fresh, what they learned, back in September. And then I had mentioned previously is bringing the agents through. So towards the end of November and early December is when we will bring the folks that are actually on the calls and talking to the U.S. customers, bringing them through the training. And then we will continue to reinforce with our team leads, okay, your agents just went through this. Let's talk about what does it mean. Let's revisit, those coaching conversations, how important they are, helping them understand what the issue is, how do we work together to solve it. So really coming out of it, two things we hope, again, will happen. One is, driving the customer experience scores up, right? We want to retain more of our customers. But to me, not that that's not important, but when I think about, again, our people, our managers and our agents, it's giving them the confidence. Again, as a team lead, I now have confidence to have these conversations. I'm approaching the conversations in a better way. And then as an agent, they're getting the better conversation. They're really clearly understanding what the issue was and how they work to improve the issue. And they also feel better equipped to take those calls because no one is trying to have a bad phone call. I truly don't believe that. They just don't understand how to have the phone call. So then there's times when if empathy isn't being utilized during the call, the customer gets frustrated. And there's times when the customer is not very kind to that agent either, right? So it's a win-win. The agent now has better skills to de-escalate the call, right? And know how to pivot and say, you know what, I'm sorry that happened. That must be terrible. Like, right, your expectation was to have your car on such a date. I can understand you're frustrated. Let me help you understand the process. Here's why it can't be there. So it's just like a couple more steps, but it's a win-win, right? Agent has better conversation, customer has a better outcome. So that to me is the real hitch, is like from an employee experience, again, better conversation. I feel better about my role. I'm getting coaching from my team lead. My team lead feels like, oh my gosh, look at my team. They're rocking it, right? My QA scores are awesome. Like I can reinforce this was a great call. So there's just so many things coming out of this initiative.
All right, great. So one of the things that I just saw as you both were just discussing just then, you were conversating, was just the way that you put it in the context of each of the different groups in the organization. And so I think one of the most important things, if you want to drive learning engagement in your organization, is not just tying learning to the business, but also helping the employees, the learners, to understand what's in it for me. And if you start thinking about the context of a customer service rep, what they do is really tough. If they've got to get on a call with a disgruntled customer, if you're giving them the tools to be able to de-escalate that, heated situation, they're going to come off the call feeling like not only have they de-escalated the situation, but they've also resolved it in an amicable way. And also the customer will go away and going, I've got what I wanted out of that. And your employee feels like they've really helped the situation. That's what this training is really helping to do. And I'm really been impressed by what you guys have put together to solve that issue. All right. So when you said what is next, obviously we've just spoken about the agents, but I think bringing this back full circle, and we've been speaking about leadership development a lot. And one of the things I think is also on the horizon now that we're talking to the leadership team on is, because we've had now good success with customer service reps, we can go back to developing leaders. So just tell us a bit more about that as a next step too.
Yes. So kicking off in Q1 of 2025, we're going back, and again, the most bang for the buck, so to speak, or the most impact, right, are those direct line managers, in my opinion, right? The people that are managing the majority of our employees. And so that's where we're focusing on the role that we call team lead. And there's, maybe a couple roles here in the US as well, but the majority of our employees are in Bulgaria. But we are going to be kicking off leadership development. So for those frontline managers, again, what are those key skills and competencies that they need to be successful, feel confident in their role, and really grow and develop their teams? So we'll be launching that in early 2025. I'm very excited. The organization as a whole is excited because people have been asking for these tools. And again, the exciting thing is we could couple the in-person training with, again, those resources that are in the LMS, and just enhance, their understanding, and then, continue to follow up after the training.
In summary, as we start wrapping up this conversation, I think one of the things is that as the CEO of Big Learning and having this desire 4 years ago to go and help small and medium businesses to bring these learning initiatives into the company, it's really, what I'm really proud of is our journey together, right? We didn't try and do everything at once. We started off and we pieced what we felt was the low-hanging fruit. We got value. We went on to the next thing. We identified the new initiative, which happened to be in-person training. And then because of the value that we've created off of those two things, the executives now see the value, even more so than ever, of learning and development. And we're now going, right, leadership development, frontline workers, team leads are the most, team leads or frontline workers are the most important thing. And I think that's what I feel is I'm most proud of, is the journey that we've been on together. And I think we're probably just scratching the surface, right? What's next? Where can we go after this? Only time will tell. So Dan, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. And I'm sure we'll bring you back on in a couple of months' time to continue this conversation as we keep on going down this path together. But thank you so much. And any final thoughts, and anything that we've missed out that you'd like to share? But I think it's been a great conversation.
No, I just appreciate this opportunity, and I'm very excited to, whether it's end of Q1 or middle of next year, to really continue to talk about. First of all, we can see with 6 months plus of data, those customer service scores, see where those have gotten to, and then also really talk about the leadership development training. I'll be able to look at our engagement survey by then. So again, it's starting to get to that point where it's exciting to see the movement of the needle with these different initiatives that we're putting in place, and the organization continuing to be open to how we help our employees and managers grow and be the best they can be.
Well, that there actually is definitely going to be our next conversation, is how do we go and get the data? Where do we get the data from to prove that these learning initiatives are actually having that desired impact? So whether it is engagement surveys, whether it is data from the LMS, whether it's performance metrics, what can we do to really show the executive team that this investment has been worthwhile? We know it is as HR folks, as L&D folks, but how do we really quantify that and prove that to the executive team? And you're going to come back in 6 months' time. We're going to discuss that as a team, as a collective. Matthew, thank you so much for your contributions, and thank you so much.
No problem. Great to be here. And yeah, it's been a pleasure so far, but we're on a journey all together. So looking forward to continue working with you, Anne.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.